Welcome. So welcome to the second speaker session of the WeWork Lab Sales Academy. And so today we'll be talking about how to successfully prospect in the digital age. And so for those of you who are new to us, this event is hosted by WeWork Labs. We are a WeWork's platform for startup and small businesses, and we provide mentoring, discounts, access to a global network, and also professional development through virtual programs such as this one today. And so WeWork Labs is free, it's included in your membership, and it's available to all WeWork members. And actually you can join us at members.weworklabs.com. I will share the link right after this in the chat. And so for today's sessions, we really encourage you to share your questions through the Q&A function that you can find on the bottom of your Zoom screen. And actually we'll leave some time at the end of the sessions to answer all your questions. And so now I'd love to introduce you to today's speakers, Anna Gordon. Hello, Anna.
Hi, Olivia.
And so Anna, so you manage HubSpot for Startups program for the UK and I, and through partnering with organizations like WeWork, you actually educate startup on all things sales and marketing. And prior to HubSpot, you worked at Enterprise Ireland, where you both advised and secured investment for Irish startups, tech startups actually, and small businesses from a different range of sectors. And so Anna, we are really, really happy to have you with us today. So we can't wait for you to start. So the stage is all yours. And quick reminder also for those who, who can't stay with us until the end, the session is recorded, and then, you can still watch it on demand through the portal, through the Labs portal, whenever you like. Okay, Anna, after you can launch the webinar today.
Great. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Olivia. And thank you so much for everyone to join. I can see it's always nice at the start seeing people trickle in. So I think we've got a good group of people now here. So I'm happy to kick off. Again, thanks for joining me on this Tuesday, wherever you are in the world. So today, as Olivia said, we're going to be talking about successful prospecting in a digital age. I won't go into this slide as Olivia's kindly introduced me, but as you said, I cover HubSpot for Startups for UK and Ireland. So yeah, excited to be here today. So just to give a bit of an insight into what we are talking about today. So first of all, kind of going to give a bit of an insight on kind of the inbound sales process, going into then elements of an effective prospecting process, a little bit on your sales story and the kind of the first part of that story in terms of developing a positioning statement and encouraging your prospects on the statement of kind of why change, why now, and then touching on a little bit at the end. I won't spend too much time on it because I do want to leave time for Q&A, but I will talk a little bit about the importance of internal alignment and building your kind of marketing SLA. So first of all, why prospect? So just to give kind of insight, I always like to say kind of the why and give a bit of stats on that. So actually salespeople who are top performers in the act of prospecting generate nearly 3 times more sales meetings than those who are so-called low performers or those who don't prospect at all. So it may sound obvious, it may sound like logic, but being successful in prospecting and having the right tools and techniques, whether you're, a startup and maybe your CEO is your salesperson, or if your company who's growing and adding more sales reps, nailing down that prospecting process is really important. So to go into, just to give a bit of insight as well into kind of the inbound sales process, there are 4 stages. We're going to be kind of focusing mostly on, based just on the identify and connect stage today. So identify, I suppose, and I'll go into more detail in a second, but basically is around identifying the right business opportunities from the start. And then connect, so connecting with leads to help them decide whether they should prioritize the goal or challenge they're facing. Then exploring, so exploring your prospects' kind of goals and challenges, and then advise, so advising prospects on why your solution is uniquely positioned to address the buyer's needs. So again, I kind of race through that, but as I said, we're kind of focusing mainly on the identify and connect stage. So identifying those leads, and then connecting with those leads, and hopefully then they become qualified leads and go on to that kind of explore process. So just to go into, because this is kind of something I'll touch on kind of throughout the presentation, this is really what kind of HubSpot has been built on. Kind of the methodology we really follow is the inbound methodology. So the inbound methodology is really the method of growing your organization by building meaningful, lasting relationships with consumers, prospects, and customers. Just pause there for a second. So just really important to, we'll kind of come up with this throughout the presentation, as I said, but really not focused on, especially at the start, kind of presenting really like building those relationships, focusing on like really the human aspect of selling. And why is it important to identify quality leads for your startup? So especially early on, like you don't want to be spending loads of time when you don't have a ton of resources on focusing on the wrong leads that maybe, you know, as a startup, like from, you know, my experience working with startups, like obviously early on, especially for those like early stage customers, it's tempting to want to sell to anyone who wants to buy from you. But ultimately those companies, if they're not, you know, if they're not that right fit, they might churn later down the line or cause problems for your business. So not only will it, you know, be kind of a time suck in the beginning of that sales journey, but also as you grow on, having the wrong fit can ultimately cause problems for you as well. So just to go into kind of the steps in a bit more detail of that prospecting process. So I won't go into this step because hopefully some of you may have attended the first kickoff session last week for WeWork, where my lovely colleague Caitlin covered the buyer persona. But for those of you who haven't watched it, I think you can access the recording from Olivia from your WeWork Labs portal. But Caitlin basically covered in detail how to create a buyer persona. And as I said, really focusing on those quality leads, those good fit leads for your business is really important. So as I said, Caitlin went into it, but just for a bit of a recap, a buyer persona is basically a semi-fictional representation of your ideal customer based on market research and real data about your existing customers. So for HubSpot, say, whenever we started, you know, as more of an inbound marketing platform, purely like 15 years ago, we had one persona, which I think was called Marketing Mary, but now we have like multiple different personas based on our different products. So again, not going to go into this in too much detail. It was covered last week, but if you do want to find out more, we have a ton of information on our blogs as well. And there's a free Make My Persona tool there as well. So really when you're prospecting, you want to be targeting the right people, thinking about your target market, the people you're targeting, who is your persona, what makes them tick. That will really help you to identify kind of the right fit leads. Now, finding the leads sounds simple, but where are some great places to look for leads? So first of all, and this is really, again, taking that kind of that inbound approach. So one great way could be optimizing your social media profiles, if that's, you know, LinkedIn, Twitter, and then sharing interesting kind of content on that, or, you know, maybe being active on LinkedIn. Like I see a ton of the sales reps in HubSpot maybe liking different posts, commenting. You'd be surprised by how often people might be, you know, describing their pain points in a LinkedIn post or something that's gone viral. And then you could comment and say, hey, I actually have some sort of solution for that. And you might be able to connect that way. Industry blogs and forums. So finding out where, you know, if your buyer persona maybe is someone in the ag tech industry and you have in the agricultural industry and you have an ag tech product, this is where it really becomes dependent on your specific sector. Like you'll know yourself, and depending on your expertise, like where that persona lives, finding where they live. Is there industry specific blogs and forums that you can, you know, either just read and or like contribute to, or different things that you can do like that as well, can be really helpful too. Asking your current customers for referrals. So as you do start to get new, again, depending on the size of your business, if you're a startup, you do start to get early stage customers, or you get more customers as you grow. Don't be afraid to ask your current customers for referrals, especially if they're happy customers, then that can really help. Like getting those direct connections, also like word of mouth referrals. Again, this is something for HubSpot, I think there's a stat that like 50% of our new business comes from existing business, like referrals. It's a huge engine for growth. So don't be afraid to lean into that, to ask for those connections. As well as that, beyond like your kind of your business network as well, you could lean into your personal network to identify potential leads. So I don't know, I live in Ireland, it's quite a small business community, so this might not localize depending on the size of your market, but also like in the UK, like you'd be surprised like who your cousin might know someone, your someone might know someone, and you could get in, like you could have a great connection there. Networking events, and these are moving to more in-person events again, but they'll still quite a lot of virtual events this side of the year, which can be a good thing as well, because you can reach people in global markets that you wouldn't necessarily been able to meet before, or there's like hybrid events. So again, you can lean into those. One that sometimes gets overlooked is revisiting closed or lost opportunities to identify leads. So say if someone said, you spent time, or maybe you just spent a little bit of time on a prospect, maybe say 6 months ago, and they said that it was a closed lost opportunity. So maybe they said the timing wasn't right, but you could set, a reminder for yourself to follow up with them in 6 months and revisit that opportunity. Or maybe they said they just couldn't get buy-in or it wasn't like an urgent thing for their company. Just those can be huge cash cows there. So don't be afraid as well to kind of revisit those closed or lost opportunities. What I must mention as well is, of course, content. So this is, generating inbound leads through things like creating your own blog, guest blogging, doing webinars. Some of these things are free, but of course, as a startup, costs you money in terms of the time input as well. So don't be afraid to outsource as well, because creating a great content engine can really help you to generate those inbound leads and then develop those prospects to go after. As well as that, when you generate those leads, if you do have a CRM, then you can use that to kind of prioritize the prospects you go after. So say, as you grow your database, you could set it up so that you filter by, I only want to see companies in my CRM from the last 3 months who have engaged with my company in X, Y, or Z, or they filled out the demo form and didn't follow up, or setting up triggers so that if someone is looking at your pricing page or something like that, like the sales reps get a notification to follow up. Again, that's something that the HubSpot reps would use a lot. So to make sure that you're really reaching out to that prospect, again, the inbound way. So they're looking at your pricing page, so you know that the time is right. It's within the context of them already looking at that. So finding those kind of things to reach out. So what's next? So I talked a bit about kind of identify. Now going a bit into that connect. So once you've identified those leads, going into the kind of the connect stage. Here's a Rick and Morty gif. So what is the point of the connect phase? So as I said, step 3, so connect, which is picking up the phone or email or social. So social could be, LinkedIn outreach, and doing it consistently. Consistency is key. So goals of that connect call. So number 1 is establishing your initial relationship. Don't be afraid, again, depending on your market, but rapport building is really important at the start, kind of establishing that kind of basis of trust. Understanding that company's high level challenges. So you're not going into super level detail here if it's only the connect call, but really understanding their high level challenges is important at this stage. And then the next steps would hopefully be, establishing some sort of next steps at the end. Maybe it isn't a fit and that disqualifies them as a lead, but if there are, hopefully, booking in exploratory call on that connect call so that you have a next step. Things to kind of avoid on that initial connect call. So are an elevator pitch. So I'll go into this in a few minutes on the kind of the sales story, but you don't want to be immediately making it about you on that initial outreach call and saying, hey, I'm this company and this is exactly what we do, and making it really salesy. And you don't want to go into a deep dive into how you can help. Again, you're just qualifying these leads. You don't want to spend a huge amount of time on deep dive yet. You're gathering information from them to see if they're a good fit for the next stage. And what's the number 1 thing we do not do on a connect call is sell, which sounds counterintuitive, but you want to be educating the prospects, understanding more about them, qualifying them, but you don't want to be doing that hard sell in that first call that might just scare them off. So what's the hardest part of the Connect call? The hardest part can be reaching out to strangers. I don't know, some people might have different, some people here might love cold calling, might hate it, but reaching out to strangers can really be the hardest part of the Connect call, making that initial outreach. You've never talked to someone before. Oops, I just get back there. So, and what are some of the main excuses we use to avoid making Connect outreach? So one of this is, as humans, we avoid doing things that we don't want to do. Sounds simple again, but really putting it on your calendar and blocking out time. So depending on your business, like if you're a sales rep, you want to be blocking out time every single day to be prospecting. So I know in HubSpot, some of the sales reps will talk about, like, they'll have maybe their morning will be blocked out for prospecting, and they'll have a particular method they go through to do that. And then the afternoon they'll block for their exploratory calls or their demos. They'll block that out. So they have kind of a regular kind of routine each day for work. So really blocking out that time in your calendar. If you're a smaller company, of course, blocking out a full morning every day isn't going to be feasible, but just making sure you're carving out some time each week for that prospecting. Kind of in line with that as well is holding yourself accountable. Again, this isn't just for prospecting. It's for everything. Like, say, if you were saying that you're going to get fit, it's September, a lot of people start doing, gym routines and getting active and eating healthy in September or in the new year. So the same goes for something like prospecting, holding yourself accountable. So telling other people, so here's again a gift, you mean to tell me you're going to hold me accountable. So really telling someone, it could be someone personal if you prefer that, but really maybe telling someone on your team that you're going to be doing this, and then maybe you could, maybe they want to be held accountable too in some way, and you can have different check-ins and ask them, maybe ask me every couple of weeks, am I actually doing this? Or maybe you could have practice sessions with them or debriefs of what maybe went wrong or what went well in a Connect call. So really having someone to hold you accountable to doing that can be really, really helpful as well. As I said, I touched on before, persistence really is key. You can't just call someone once. If you've got that lead in your CRM, you want to be really persistent. And there's some stats here on over 30% of leads are actually never contacted at all. And by making just a few more call attempts, sales reps can experience up to a 70% increase in contact rates. I think I've got some more detailed stats in here. So how many touches can it take before a prospect actually responds? So 80% of sales require 5 follow-up calls, so think in, and 44% of sales reps actually give up after 1 follow-up. So whether that's an email or a call. So let's go back here. So just to let that sink in. So as I said, persistence is key, not just calling once. They might not have answered. Maybe they just are ignoring you, but maybe they didn't answer for another reason, or maybe there's something you can do to be more creative in your outreach. I'll go into that in a bit in terms of tools for prospecting, but really not just calling once and giving up. And how can your CRM help you keep an efficient prospecting cadence? So all these follow-ups sound great in person or in theory, but you might be saying to me, hey, Anna, I don't have time for that. But really trying to create having different things having different tech to help you do this and arm you with the right kind of things is really helpful. So whether you're using HubSpot CRM or a different CRM, having a CRM system early on, obviously for basics of organizing like your contacts in your companies, but also for those prospecting tools will ultimately save you time and close you more deals. So things like, again, this doesn't have to be a HubSpot CRM. A lot of this is available in other CRMs as well, but things like task queues. So like I said, if you want to employ the method I said about contacting leads, where you want to reach out to close lost opportunities. So setting yourself a task reminder to follow up in 6 months. And then, you'd have those reminders, or even if it's, maybe you had a call with someone the week before and you want to follow up even the next week, like it could be shorter term tasks as well. So setting yourself those reminders, as well as that filters, as I talked about in the CRM. So being able to filter your contacts based on who's actually interacting with your company, who might be a good fit, who fits your buyer persona. So, you know, filtering depending on the information you collect from prospects in different forms you might have on your website. Like you could filter by the industry and things like that as well, to make sure, you know, if you only want to target people in the med tech industry or the ag tech industry. As well as that, I think there's stats that, you know, a lot of, I can't remember the exact statistic, but the sales reps spend so much time on administrative tasks rather than the act of actually selling. You know, whether that's internal approvals or processes or reporting or whatever it might be. So really important to give that time back to sales reps through kind of productivity tools. So these could be things like templates. So if a sales rep is doing that prospecting outreach, they have different templates that they can use, you know, that can be personalized based on the business. You can put in little personalization tokens so they think it's addressed just to them, or creating different sequences. So sequence is basically, and it basically would be an email sequence, so that a prospect, you know, that would send basically the 5 follow-ups automatically to the company. So it would say, oh, on X date, I want to send the prospect, you know, this prospect is interested, I want to send them this email on X date, and then it'll send an automated email whenever you decide to send it. So maybe it's a week later, and then they'll get this, you know, I want to send them this blog on this date, and it's kind of a flow. And then it will end either, you know, after 5 emails, or it would end once they actually book a call or make contact. So really leaning into those productivity tools will help you remain efficient and reduce that kind of administrative burden. As I said, just reiterating there, book 1 to 3 hours a day on your calendar. Again, this depends on the size of your business and your capacity. That's for more, I suppose, sales reps. So what do I strive for? So for that, build and connect. So practice, as I said, practicing, you know, you could bounce off different people in your team if you want as like initial practice, but really call, you know, making sure to call at least 10 to 15 leads per week. Some of them might not answer, but just making that call is a really good first step. And what are the elements of a good connect call? So number 1 is the mentality of always be helping. So again, leading into this inbound approach, this inbound methodology approach of being human and helpful. I've linked a great article there from Dan Tyre, who I think was one of the first of the five hires in HubSpot. So he's been around a while. So he wrote a great blog on it's time to move from always be closing to this new sales mantra, which is always be helping, which sounds counterintuitive. But if you are showing an interest in the prospect, educating them rather than that hard sell from early on, that can be really beneficial. Tone of voice, be human and helpful, and research. So I'll go into that next. So even before, it's important to be doing research throughout the sales process. So whenever you move into that more exploratory phase, when you're gathering more detailed information about the company and their needs and all that, but even before you make that first call, you don't want to be going in completely blind. You want to be doing your research on that company. So as I said, research, so differentiating yourself from cold callers. So focusing on the why you, why now, which I'll go into in a couple of minutes. Transcending your solution, focusing on the problem. So not just saying, hey, this is my solution. What's the problem that you're solving for them? What's their pain point? And starting with some sort of an urgency from the get-go. So what's their urgency for adopting your solution? Like, are you, you know, are you a privacy tech solution and there's, you know, this company needs to be GDPR compliant? Or did they just hire someone, are they hiring loads of staff in your HR tech company and this will solve their needs? So try to find different levers to create some sort of urgency from the get-go to really lean into that and try to like shorten the spending. Depending on your industry, you might have a longer sales cycle, but starting with that urgency can help to shorten the sales cycle from the get-go. And in that kind of that research stage as well, understanding that different roles have different stories. So before, connecting with that company, you want to have, you can find loads of information online on the overall, company mission, their goals, whatever you can find publicly available. But as well as that, you want to understand, depending on who you're reaching out to on the connect call, you want to understand their specific, how their different roles makes them care about different things. So say if it was, you're connecting with the CEO, so say our CEO Yamini, would care about, we care about company growth and CAC and long-term value, because of customer acquisition costs, long-term value. Whereas our CMO, so Kip, will care more about overall marketing performance and lead generation. So how many leads are the overall team driving? What different teams in HubSpot does he need to, what different goals should they have? But I suppose depending on if you're targeting, small businesses or large businesses, it might be hard to get in touch with these C-level executives and even get that connect call. So then another way as well, when you're doing your research, is there someone you can find on LinkedIn or from the forum who might be an internal champion? So say if you have a marketing product and you get a marketing exec really excited about the solution because they might not necessarily be the buyer of the solution, but they would be the user of the solution. Then can you make them kind of an internal champion? And then they might be able, they might not have huge decision-making power, but they might get really excited about this and then bring it to their manager, who brings it to the manager's manager. And then you can kind of sell upwards in that way. But no matter who you're selling to, if you are reaching out to, say, internal champion instead, doing your research on that person, on that company, and understanding how their goals are different is really important. Just going to take a sip of water before I go into your sales story. So your sales story, why change, why now? So here is the scenario. So you are on a connect call with a C-level executive at a prospect company in your target market. And towards the beginning of the conversation, they ask, what does your company do? So this is kind of your sales story. So I'll be focusing on the first one here. So your sales story, number one is what problems you address and for whom. Number two is with what solutions do you address them? And number three is what makes you different. So number one is also known as kind of your sales positioning statement. So focus, as I said, focusing for today, I'm just focusing on this first one, conscious of time. But yeah, it's focus for today is why change and why now. So it's really what problems you address and for whom. So first of all, I want to go into kind of 4 tips for this on developing that connect kind of positioning statement. So number one, really important, is focus on your prospect first. So not, as I said before, not making it immediately about you, doing an immediate, elevator pitch, and focusing on your solution, really starting with focusing on your prospect. So for example, you could say, we typically work with X type of company who aspire to X, but they have these kinds of challenges. So if you take nothing else out of today's session, start describing what you do by focusing on who you help and with what. Pro tip number 2, add specifics to give it some bite. So for example, oftentimes they've tried X, give examples, but they still aren't achieving the results that they'd hoped for. Wait, sorry, one sec. Oh, let's go back there. So here's an example. So what do you think? So we work with sales managers. I'll just actually read out the full thing. So this is just a tweet. So from a guy called Rob. He said, hey Lions, tried my opening statement at my manufacturer only network group. Again, he's finding where his persona lives. He has a network group he goes to. And he said, the positioning statement or the opening statement was, we work with sales managers frustrated that the marketing department is wasting money and leads suck. Guy comes up to me after meeting and says, I'm that guy. So we're meeting next week. So just a good example of how he used that there. So pro tip number 3, be mindful of emotion. It's okay to be a bit bold. So it's actually said that 95% of a buyer's decision takes place unconsciously. So think about what's one thing you do as a salesperson to tap into your buyer's unconscious and activate other senses besides simply rational thought. So of course, showing how your solution can maybe, quantifying the effectiveness of it in terms of maybe, you can say, oh, it'll save you X amount or do Y, but really being able to tap into that emotional aspect can be really effective as well. There's a lot that goes on unconsciously. I've listed a couple of kind of suggested reads there as well. So predictably irrational, science of selling, and then influence, which is Robert Cialdini. So don't have to read all those. You can find some research online as well, but just some good recommended reads there. So I said, mindful of emotion. And then tip number 4, end with a question. So for example, does any of that resonate with you? So you've said all these things, and does any of that resonate with you? So asking a question at the end like that returns the focus to your prospect, which is where it should be. So you're starting with the prospect and you're ending with the prospect. So keeping it nice and neat there. So here's kind of, will do a couple kind of examples there, kind of putting those kind of 4 tips together. So we typically work with professional services companies who are serious about growth, but are often frustrated. They spend time, money, and effort on their website and other marketing tactics and still aren't producing the traffic and leads they had hoped for. Does that resonate with you? And then here's another example. So we help startup founders like you that are passionate about the problem they're trying to solve and have found problem solution fit, but are frustrated because they haven't gotten any traction with their target market and are struggling to secure their next round of funding. Does this happen to you? So again, those words, so you're saying that's your target, that's startup founders like you. Using frustrated, that's an emotional term. They're frustrated, they're this, they're that, and you're ending with that question. You're talking about their pain points. It's just a good example. So depends on your business and your target market. But here, as I said, there's just a couple examples. So your actionable assignment for this week is to get a prospect's head nodding or saying, I'm that person. So try to practice a sales positioning statement and focus on your prospect first. And then, again, sorry, just taking water. Thirsty, it's hot in Ireland today. So think about that assignment. And then just some examples of tools to use for prospecting. I touched on this a bit earlier, but Vidyard is a really useful one. So using video in your prospecting, video can be used throughout the sales process, but at HubSpot, we find it particularly useful in that prospecting stage. So, and it doesn't have to be like a really long video, probably like 2 minutes at most, maybe 2 or 3 minutes. But basically Vidyard is a video software tool where, sales reps can record if they're reaching out, rather than a lot of people can find it easier to consume video content rather than looking at more and more emails, and video is a way that you can stand out in that email outreach. And I'll again make it leaning into that inbound thing, making it more human, showing your face, showing who you are. I think Vidyard have a free version as well that you can download, and you can connect it to HubSpot if you've the free version of HubSpot or your other CRM. Or even if you don't, you can use it as a standalone tool. But again, makes you kind of, as I said, be human and stand out from all the other emails that company might be getting in their inbox. And then they might be, I think there is stats on that they're much more like the close rates can really increase by using something like video. Email Hunter can be another helpful tool. Again, I think there's a free version of that where you can basically type in, use the Email Hunter website to type in a company. So say if the company was HubSpot, and then it will spit back out all the publicly available emails on all the publicly available emails associated with that company. As well as that, LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I won't go into this. I know this is teeing you up for another session. I think you're doing the next WeWork Lab session is actually on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is a hugely important and helpful tool for prospecting. Google Alerts for target prospects can be great as well. So if you want to be reaching out to prospects, I know like a big thing in sales is those trigger points. So you want to be reaching out to them on their terms. You also want it to be kind of have an excuse almost to be reaching out. So trigger events might be, the company has raised funding, so they've cash to buy your solution. The company, recently announced that they appointed a new CEO, or they've announced that they're expanding into new international markets. These are all like exciting things of company news. So what you could do is if you've already started targeting a company, or if they're in your list to maybe reach out to soon to connect with, you can basically set a Google alert so that anytime that company is mentioned in the news that you get an alert, and then you'll reach out in a timely manner when the lead is hot. So that's really important as well. HubSpot, we use Gong for calls. So this is used again throughout the whole sales process, but basically we'd record all our calls. So in that connect call, you'd be able to look back and maybe see it could be used for note taking. So you don't have to be taking loads of notes if there might be things you missed, or it reminds you to follow up on things. But also for internal learning as well, you can share that with other people on your team and things like that too, or just look back on it to see how you might be able to improve in your next connect call. And then your CRM. So as I said, whether you use HubSpot or another CRM, being able to use those different tools for tracking contacts, tracking companies, using sequences, templates, all these things are really good enablement for your prospecting. So I'm just going to pause for a second. Those are some of best practice kind of tools that we'd use in HubSpot. As I said, videoed all those, but I'd be interested so that you can all kind of learn from each other and I can learn from you. Are there any other kind of prospecting tools that you use? I'll give you all a minute to maybe write those in the chat, and then I'll kind of just move on. Just take a pause there.
Yeah, yes, please don't be shy.
Thanks, Olivia.
To hear from you if you can answer in the chat, and tell us, which prospecting tool you are using. We use Refract for call recording. So yeah.
Okay, nice. You use call recording still. Cool. Refract. I haven't heard that one.
Is it similar to Gong? The person is asking, but actually I'm asking too.
Yeah, it sounds similar as Refract. Just so with Gong, yeah, basically we'll record all the calls and then you can listen back to it after. And then it will tell you like how long you spent on talking about pricing versus this, and then it'll remind you to follow up on certain things. Is that kind of what Refract is?
Okay, and anyone else who want to share is a prospecting tool, or if you don't use any prospecting tool, it's interesting also to know. So Nicola is telling us that he scrapped the internet. Nice. Yeah, nice. Outreach also for Kazin, and Aircall.
Aircall, cool.
Yeah, actually we'll have the head of growth at Aircall who will join next month for a session on a negotiation. Nice. Yeah. Industry newsletter. Yeah.
Great. We'll see if a few things you've mentioned those, Olivia, pop it in the chat. So I'll move on, but feel free everyone to kind of continue to share and learn from each other. So I'll just move on here. So I'm just going to focus. I want time for the end for Q&A at the end. But I'll focus a tiny bit on building a marketing SLA. So just to give a bit of context of this, I suppose here on the left you have this kind of, I guess, traditional sales and marketing funnel, where marketing get leads, get those MQLs, send them to sales, and then the output of that process is customers. So this very much just sees customers as kind of the output. Doesn't really see customers helping you grow. Whereas the HubSpot, we very much focus On this flywheel model, you can find, we have blogs on this if you want to look into a bit more detail, but basically what it is it has, you can see that kind of that orange dot there enlarged. It has customers very much the center, helping you to grow. And then it's very much around aligning each of your customer facing teams around helping that customer to grow. So they're really not the output, they're really, they help you to turn that wheel and turn that wheel. So as you can see here, the different kind of color coded things. So attract, marketing, engage, sales, and delight is services. So aligning your sales, marketing, and services organizations is really important. So again, if you're a company, if you're early stage, you might only have a few members of staff now, but as you scale your team, important to kind of keep these principles in mind. That's kind of the context there. So I'm going to go a tiny bit into SLAs. So a service level agreement is basically designed to create alignment between two parties by setting clear expectations and mitigating any issues before they happen. And the why, again, I always like to lean into the stats. So companies with an active SLA are 34% more likely to experience greater year-over-year ROI than those companies that aren't, and they're 21% more likely to get greater budget allocations, and they're 31% more likely to be hiring additional salespeople to meet the demand of that. So basically with an SLA, there's a kind of a free template here, and we have other blogs that goes into other kind of company examples. You can kind of, I'll share, I think Olivia will put the recording on the We Work Labs Academy, and I'll share my slides after as well, so you can have these resources and download that. But it's basically around defining what are the marketing goals, what are the sales goals, what is an MQL, when does the handoff occur. So if you are, if you're spending all the time on, that prospecting, but also marketing or developing all those inbound leads, and then you're targeting them, just ensuring that alignment is really important. So I don't want to focus on that too much, but that's just a little bit on SLA. So just to do, I know I've covered a lot of content there, so just to do a little bit of a recap, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about HubSpot and HubSpot for Startups. But for your prospecting checklist, so number 1, define your buyer persona. Caitlin's workshop went over that last week. Even if you already maybe created, if you're a bit further on in your company journey, even if you created a buyer persona at the start, that may have changed. They change over time. So yeah, defining that buyer persona or redefining it. Defining the source of leads. Where are you going to look for these leads? Where are you going to get them? 3, developing your connect call positioning statement. So I went over that. Next, establish some sort of a prospecting sequence, or creating like your templates, really leading into the, any productivity tools or any prospecting tools that you might have, even if you don't have these, even creating like a simple kind of Gmail, script that you can use in your emails or something like that, so you're not constantly spending time creating new emails, and that's so you have something like that. Next, I said this a couple of times, but just going to reiterate once more. So block time in your calendar every single day, or if you are time poor as a startup, just blocking some sort of time every week to focus on that prospecting. Get held accountable by your team or someone else personal to you. Next, do your research. Important to do research, as I said, throughout the sales process, but especially as well in that initial kind of connect stage. You want to, if you do get, manage to get through to someone, they pick up the phone, you don't want to be going in blind. You want to have some information to really hook them in at the start. So do your research and then start reaching out. And lastly, don't forget internal alignment. So just to go into this, I'll just do a couple minutes on this so we have time for questions. But this education series presented to you by HubSpot for Startups. Caitlin went into this last week, but for anyone who didn't join, so basically HubSpot for Startups includes educational resource and tailored training. So there's different we have a startup content library online, which has different templates and stuff like that for startups, but also would run specific training sessions for our top partners like WeWork. So really happy to partner on this workshop. We also have an integrated platform for startups with access to over 500 software integrations. As well as that, if you have an app or building an app, we have an app partner program which basically it's free, and it's basically an opportunity to list on our app marketplace. So if you're interested in that as well, you can just Google App Partner Program HubSpot. Next, professional software startup pricing. So as part of, if you're part of WeWork, you can get access to a great HubSpot for Startups discount, so you can check out your portal for that. Or if you're not part of WeWork, we also have, we have a number of different partners globally, so your partner might be part of our partner network as well. So some really nice discounts in there if you're thinking of using HubSpot. So what is HubSpot? Just quickly for anyone here who doesn't know. So HubSpot is basically designed to help you optimize each stage of your buyer's journey. So that's the journey that someone goes on from being a stranger, knowing nothing about your product or service, to hopefully becoming a prospect, converting into a customer, and then becoming like a promoter or evangelist of your company, and then really making that flywheel spin and, you know, getting more referrals that way. And HubSpot has basically different hubs that link into this. So we have 5 hubs with the CRM at the center of that. So we have marketing, sales, service, and CMS, and ops hub as well. So you can get potentially access to startup friendly discounts, but as well as that, if you want to start with HubSpot for free, we do have a great free version of our CRM, which includes like free aspects of the CRM, but also free aspects of the marketing, sales, and service tools. So if you do want to start kind of moving out, maybe if you're using a Google Sheet or Excel file, moving those contacts into a CRM, or start trying out some templates, or like our meetings tool or sequences tool, or things like that, feel free to kind of test that out in the free version of HubSpot. We also have a great HubSpot Academy. There's a bunch of free courses here. Some of them are specific to HubSpot, but there's a lot on kind of sales and marketing best practices as well. So like if you want to learn more about inbound, we have a great inbound marketing course. They're done a lot through video and stuff, so quite nice to understand and follow. If you want to learn more about HubSpot for Startups, check out our startup office hours, which are every Wednesday at 10 a.m. and you can register there. So I think that's my last slide there.
Okay, Anna, thank you so much. And actually, you'll be back in November for another session on marketing automation. If I don't remember the right title of the session, but I know it's all about marketing automations to really help you close your deals. And, and also it's all about, you know, like the full marketing cycle, if I can say.
Be focusing on automation to close leads, so kind of marketing and sales automation. So please join me then. I think it's November 4th, but it's on the landing page, so I'll see you all then.
So thanks again for today's sessions. It was a lot of great learnings. The session will be the recording will be available soon on the WeWork Labs member portal, and also the presentation on Slack.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Everyone.
Bye.
Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.